What's going on, everybody? I'm Jabby Kaway.
And I'm ACHARA KIRK.
We are talking about Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny. I have an IMDb summary here in front of us. Archaeologist Indiana Jones races against time to retrieve a legendary artifact that can change the course of history. So we are in an era of sequels to films that are,
old?
I wouldn't say old, but have history to it. And, Top Gun Maverick is an example of that. We got another
excellent example.
Bad Boys potentially coming. Men in Black is an ongoing thing. We still hope for a Back to the Future Part 4.
Oh, yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
It's an age of revisiting things.
Exactly.
And a great and deep love for nostalgia. Stuff that we grew up with.
Exactly.
That was quality.
Yes.
And we want it back.
Exactly.
With quality.
And I think that, the immediate comparison I would draw this against is probably Kingdom of the Crystal Skull, because Kingdom of the Crystal Skull was a sequel that kind of like this, it came long after the third installment of Indiana Jones, and people were very, very excited for that film because they really wanted to see Harrison Ford, cracking that whip again and, moving around and doing his adventures, archaeology.
Making archaeology sexy.
Yes, and it was obviously a massive disappointment. And I can say honestly that this is a better film, but I don't know if it's giving this movie too much credit by saying that. It's like, was the bar that high, because Kingdom of the Crystal Skull was such a bad movie. And so this is not bad. It's not great.
Yeah.
Let me give some constructive criticisms first before I go into my positives. There were definitely some moments of some wonky CGI. There were moments, again, where the CGI looked great and fantastic. When you guys see the movie, I think you're going to know right away what I'm talking about. There's other moments where characters are moving and the CGI does not look as good as I wanted to, and I felt it was pulling me out of the movie.
It's really nice to see Harrison Ford doing his thing again, even at his age. The way you had put it was, it's missing that charm.
Exactly. Like, as I was watching it, I was thinking, well, it's got all of the things that you need for an Indiana Jones movie.
Yeah.
Obviously, there's Indiana Jones, there's some fun characters, there's an adventure, and there's all of that stuff.
And John Williams' music.
Yes, and John Williams' score, which was amazing.
Yes.
It was so lovely to have that again. But then I was just like, it's just missing some sort of charm, heart. Something like that special secret sauce. And I turned to you at the end of the film and I'm like, I just don't know. I can't place my finger on it because it has all of the parts.
For it being a film that's made in 2023, I was surprised at how it didn't try to speed to the end of the film. It felt long, but simultaneously, I admire the fact that it wasn't like Michael Bay paced. You know what I mean?
Because I guess that's a positive.
Yeah, that would not feel like an Indiana Jones film. If you go back and watch the original trilogy, it's not like chop, 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 with the editing and just freaking speed racing to the end of the film.
But it was exciting.
Pace-wise, it felt a little bit long, a little bit slow.
I am not, against films having some, when it comes to pacing, being a more on the slow burn side, so I'm totally fine with it. It just felt like there were times a little bit where it dragged here and there.
There's a section of the film that has a flashback of Indiana Jones as a young guy, and they did some de-aging there. And it was kind of disappointing in that, the CGI was not better on his face, especially with consideration to how much money was spent on this movie. I was expecting that to be stellar.
Well, it's so funny because I remember when we watched the trailer, we were like, oh my God.
It was remarkable.
It looked so good. And then when we watched the film, we were like, this is distracting. It's quite a considerable chunk of the film, or at least it feels that way.
Right.
And so you have plenty of time to kind of look at him and be like, ooh, there's some sort of uncanny valley effect going on here.
There was definitely that.
It's a little bit strange.
Yeah. And I wish they had just truncated that section of the film a lot more. I don't even think it necessarily needed to be in the movie, at least not as much as it was. It felt like a 20-minute sequence.
Yeah, it really did. It may have been. Who knows? But it felt that long.
And so I don't think that was wholly necessary, but it was there. To be honest with you, when we first see him as the young Indy, it was nice. And everyone collectively was like, oh, this is nice.
Yeah.
But then he started started looking around as Indiana Jones, and something just felt a little bit amiss.
Initially, looking at his face, I was like, yay, it's young Indy. Wow, looks so good. And then he started talking, and I'm like, you sound old.
Yeah, something seems weird.
Something's sus here.
Yeah.
And now my brain's like battling with itself going, huh, what?
I heard that there was a number of reshoots involved in this production because the initial intention of the film was one direction, and then there was some backlash about it, or some, I don't know what it was, that informed a new direction that they had to go and do reshoots for. And so you can kind of feel that when you're watching this film, that like it wasn't quite assembled necessarily on the script on the page when they decided to start production on this. It didn't feel like a necessarily cohesive film. It felt like a lot of ideas that sort of made its way into the final product. And I kind of wish that they just did a different story. Now, the rumor I heard is that they wanted to do this kind of handing off of the torch thing from Indiana Jones to the female lead in this film. I just know her as
Phoebe Waller-Bridge.
I know her as Fleabag.
Yes.
I think she's a great actress.
Yeah.
I just don't know that I would have wanted her in this role. I think she's really, really good.
Yeah.
And she handles the material wonderfully, whether this is like rewrite material or whatever was from the original script.
I thought her performance was, honestly, like, I really enjoyed her performance. It's just her character. There were times I enjoyed what her character was doing, and other times I was like, this is really generic, where the arc went with her character.
This seems like a missed opportunity for Emilia Clarke, or whatever her name is, because she's supposed to be the daughter of someone short. And I'm like, what? We have someone like that who's English. Like, she's very famous. Why wouldn't we cast her for that? But even with all that, like, I don't think that's the direction the film should have gone. I understand that they're doing this sort of weird mishmash of things to kind of give you the familiar adventure of the older Indiana Jones film, specifically Raiders of the Lost Ark, because she does kind of resemble, what's her name from that first installment?
Yeah.
You guys know who I'm talking about. I forgot her name. I can't remember for the top.
Raiders.
For the Raiders.
His wife.
His wife,
now.
yeah.
Yeah, Marion. That's the name of the character.
Marion, thank
Yeah.
you. That's what they were trying to kind of go for, is that kind of vibe, sort of. And I'm like, okay, I see what you're doing, movie. I just would have done a different movie. At the end of it, I was like, just scratching my head going, I don't know why this was the story that they told. It would have been cool if the adventure was with LEQUAN. Like, somehow they get linked up again. You know? Yeah, bring back, like, old cast members, and somehow Marion, sorry. Somehow she is roped into all this, and they got to save her.
When you were pitching that at the end of the film, I was like, yeah, why wasn't that the film?
Yeah, it just seems so odd to me that wasn't the story. And I'm like, why are we doing this other thing over here?
I don't know if I'm willing to put it in the same league as the first three films. But I mean, hey, look, it's a welcome addition. I would say it's the fourth best film in the series.
They nailed the aesthetic pretty well in I'd say the first half. I feel like the second half, they sort of visually dropped off. Things became less interesting visually.
It's just another adventure. And I guess that tracks with Indiana Jones, except for the fact that in the last one, Kingdom of the Crystal Skull, there was this whole thing about his history. And I'm like, okay, that's cool. It's like, he does have a legacy. Why not borrow from that legacy and leverage it? And they did do that a little bit in this movie. I won't say how, but they did reference Kingdom of the Crystal Skull, and I thought it was brilliant how they did it. They actually made Kingdom of the Crystal Skull a little bit worthwhile just for this one moment in this movie. And you'll have to watch it to find out what I'm talking about, because it's kind of a spoiler.
You get a lot of pure nostalgic moments in this film, so I was really grateful and appreciative of that. And you get some nostalgic moments of other films in the series as well without going into spoilers, which is always appreciative. As I always say, I don't mind fan service, because that's, we're the ones who pay the big bucks to go see the movie. So as long as it's not deteriorating from the plot, I'm all for fan service.
If you're just wanting to see Indiana Jones in one more adventure, then yeah, go watch it. Just enjoy that.
They definitely acknowledge his age, and
Yes.
they kind of make that part of the story. And I think that's actually kind of cool.
I wish that they had done it more, though. But then he probably wouldn't be able to go on that adventure, because there were certain moments I was like, you are moving much too well for your age, sir.
Harrison Ford gave a fine performance, considering the age limitations of what he's capable of doing.
They didn't really do the best job of illustrating to us, the audience, why this journey was important. I mean, we get like the bigger stakes.
Yeah.
But the personal stakes aren't really wholly clear. And it's like when the film's over, you're like, what was the point of that? Like, why did we go through all that?
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But it's fine. There are moments that were fun. I had laughs while watching the film. There were some thrilling moments in the story that had me, excited. And, there was like a tuk-tuk chase, or what would you call that? Auto rickshaw chase.
He did actually call it a tuk-tuk.
Yeah, like that sequence was actually cool. Like, I thought that was a lot of fun. There was a lot of use of CGI. I would have done with less of that. I would have liked to have done with less of that, I should say. But I do understand why, because it's Harrison Ford is older now.
Yeah.
And all that.
There's certainly limitations there.
I know that this is like not at all worth wishing for at this point, but at the end of it, I did really wish that it was shot on film, because I'm watching it and I'm like, it doesn't have the look of the old films, and it would have been so cool if they managed to bring that back, and using film would have been an easy way to bring that back, because the first three were shot on film, and it's got that cool punch, contrasty warmth to it that's kind of rough around the edges. It's like, that's what film is, and that's why Quentin Tarantino and Nolan keep fighting for it, because it looks beautiful, and it would have made this film that much better. But everything's digital now, so you can whatever.
Maybe this is just an Indiana Jones staple in all the films, and I'm just being again nitpicky, but I just felt like a lot of times too, the main characters, including Indiana Jones and supporting characters, to achieve whatever they needed to, it relied on the villains making dumb, low IQ moves, whether it was their strategies or whatnot. And again, I know that's an Indiana Jones thing, and that's just a generic thing in films, like, oh, this had to happen so they could. I get that. It's more of a nitpick, but I just felt like it happened quite a bit. There were times when I'm like, wait, how was that not noticeable, or what? Why didn't that happen? So when you see the movie, you'll have a little more context.
I will say this about the villains in the story. They definitely felt like Indiana Jones villains.
And by that you mean that they made some mistakes so that the heroes could get away sometimes?
No, not that. Just in the vibe. There was something about the vibe of the villains that felt classic.
Right. Yeah.
That's the easiest way I can put it, is when I was watching the film, I'm like, this feels like Indiana Jones. They did a pretty good job there.
Yeah, like it does. It feels like Indiana Jones, but like less charming than the first three.
There was an attempt, speaking of Ke Huy Quan, there was an attempt to have a short round in this story, and I'm like,
Hashtag not my short round.
Yeah, I mean, he was cool.
He was fine.
But
he was lovely young kid.
All that did was remind me that this should have been a different story. I get what the movie's doing. I get what they're after. It's that sort of nostalgia bait, which I'm fine with. I don't mind nostalgia bait, but do it right. And so I was like, okay, I see what. Yeah, all right, cool. The last thing I'll say is, if you're gonna watch this movie, if you're at all considering watching it, do not wait for streaming, because if you do, you're not gonna finish it. You have to watch it in theaters, because I know what it's like to have a shorter attention span. You know what I mean? Like, there are so many shows I'm sure people start, so many movies people start, and they just like check out. They do something else, or their friend calls them up. Like, they get distracted. This film requires that you don't get distracted. I think it requires you to go to the theater and watch it, because otherwise you're gonna check out. Like, you're not gonna finish it. Go to the theater and watch it if you're considering watching it, so you can at least get the whole thing. You know what I mean?
That's interesting.
Am I wrong?
No, because if you want to finish it, it's good to go to a place where it's awkward to leave.
Yeah, no distractions.
If anything, I say go see it for Harrison Ford. I thought his performance alone, warranted to go check this film out.
That's all I have to say about that.
Yeah. That's all we have to say about it. We'd love to go more into context again. It's just with non-spoiler talk, and it's just a lot harder to go deeper into our thoughts here. But are you going to be seeing this opening day? Let us know in the comments, and we'd love to hear your thoughts. And maybe possibly we'll do a spoiler talk. We know Jabby and ACHARA will.
You guys, thanks so much for hanging out. Hopefully you enjoyed hearing our opinions on this. And if you got a chance to see it, let us know your feelings in the comments below. Subscribe, bell icon, all notifications. Vote this up. Thanks for hanging out. I'm Jabby Kuwait. This is
ACHARA KIRK.
Peace out.